Alright, so next one is multiple choice, multiple answer. Multiple choice, multiple answer. What is the important thing that you have to keep in mind in multiple choice, multiple answer? Negative marking. Okay, so it's very, very important that you choose only those you think are the correct answer or you think you are absolutely confident. For example, let's say, I'll just give you an example of how the negative marking works here. For example, let's say A and B are the correct answers. Yeah, so Bhavna, I am coming to it. So let's say A and B are the correct answers, and you have chosen A, B, and C. So what happens is you will get 1 point for this correct answer, 1 point for this, so that is 2, and -1 for this. So you will get a total of 1 point. Let's say you also chose this one. So you will get 2 points for the correct answer and -2 for incorrect. So that will make it 0. Let's say you chose this also. Then also your score will be 0. So the minimum that you can get is 0. It will not go below 0. Hope that answers your question. Is this clear? How negative marking works? Alright, so clear, Subhavna? It doesn't go below 0. Alright. Alright, so let me play this audio. Listen carefully, stay focused.
Last week, we started talking about problems related to rural depopulation, and today I want to look at a specific case study in the French region of Limousin, where the population had been steadily decreasing and steadily aging too, up until the year 1990. That was the year the Regional Council set up a special commission focused on repopulation, and they introduced what is known as a voluntarist policy in the attempt to attract newcomers. Curiously, one of the first problems they came up against was persuading the local population that it was necessary and possible to attract new people to the area. They found that many villagers, whose own kids had gone off to live elsewhere, couldn't believe that their region was actually capable of attracting what they considered to be sophisticated people from the cities. But eventually, they succeeded in getting the majority of locals on board and, over 1 decade, Limousin managed to attract 15,000 new residents. So how did they go about it? Well, basically, they worked in collaboration with the media and several organizations dedicated to bettering rural life. They did presentations at local trade fairs and conferences, and they managed to make contact with a large number of city dwellers who wanted to move to the country. They also provided help and follow-up for newcomers as they were settling in. And, in my opinion, one of the important things about this campaign is that the Commission was aware of the city's limitations. The president of the Regional Council made it clear from the start that their aim was only to attract the number of newcomers that the area could productively absorb. In other words, the project had sustainability at its core.
Okay. How many of you read the question? Tarun. Very important to read the question critically. Reading the question critically is half the job done. This is something that we discussed in reading session. Remember? According to the speaker, which of the following has the Limousin Regional Council done in order to address the problem of depopulation? So what are the measures taken to address the problem of depopulation is the question. So Bhavna, do you think it's all the above? You still think it's all the above? Okay. So the question is specifically asking about the steps, the measures taken to address the problem of depopulation. I don't see a perfect answer. Okay. Grants for new businesses. Okay. How many of you want to listen to this once again? Okay, Shilpi does not want to make her again. Okay, let me just say it once again. And this, because none of you got it right. Okay, none of you, some of you clearly got it wrong. So listen to this once again. Now that you read the question clearly, you know what exactly are you looking for. Alright, so here you go.
Last week, we started talking about problems related to rural depopulation, and today I want to look at a specific case study in the French region of Limousin, where the population had been steadily decreasing and steadily aging too, up until the year 1990. That was the year the Regional Council set up a special commission focused on repopulation, and they introduced what is known as a voluntarist policy in the attempt to attract newcomers. Curiously, one of the first problems they came up against was persuading the local population that it was necessary and possible to attract new people to the area. They found that many villagers, whose own kids had gone off to live elsewhere, couldn't believe that their region was actually capable of attracting what they considered to be sophisticated people from the cities. But eventually, they succeeded in getting the majority of locals on board and, over 1 decade, Limousin managed to attract 15,000 new residents. So how did they go about it? Well, basically, they worked in collaboration with the media and several organizations dedicated to bettering rural life. They did presentations at local trade fairs and conferences, and they managed to make contact with a large number of city dwellers who wanted to move to the country. They also provided help and follow-up for newcomers as they were settling in. And, in my opinion, one of the important things about this campaign is that the Commission was aware of the city's limitations. The president of the regional council made it clear from the start that their aim was only to attract the number of newcomers that the area could productively absorb. In other words, the project had sustainability at its core.
CBE, okay, grants for new businesses. Alright, so just confused about supporting new customers. He's talking about that. Okay, so something that is not explicitly mentioned. Okay, offer grants for new businesses. We don't know how they are going to support it. So don't assume anything, Bhavna. So those of you have chosen E. I think that is what Bhavna is talking about. So maybe you might have thought that about supporting newcomers. We don't know whether it's by granting new businesses, offering grants for new businesses. So don't assume anything. Always in multiple choice, multiple answer, you will have more than one response correct. But yes, if you're not very sure, the best thing to do here is just stick to one answer. Just stick to one answer. If you're not very sure, just stick to one answer. The correct answers are B and C. Why do you think it's B and C? I think most of you mentioned C. I think only Divya mentioned B, but then the other answer that you got is D, which is not correct. Alright, so let's see. This is the transcript of what you have just heard. Persuading. The first problem was persuading the local population that it was necessary and possible to attract new people. But eventually they succeeded in getting the majority of locals on board. This is why. How many of you can hear me clearly? Tarun, can you hear me? Yeah, just 1 second. So this is why convinced locals of the problem, right? Convinced locals of the problem is correct. Given promotional talk, why is that correct? So there are two things. One is something will be explicitly mentioned, and the other thing is implicit. It's understood. Even though they have not explicitly mentioned, it is understood. So why do you think they gave promotional talk is correct? Yeah, that's correct, Megha. So they did presentations at local trade fairs and conferences. This option is the fourth one. Fourth one is what? Attended international conferences? No. Yes, it's not international conference. So understand that all these choices are framed in such a way that you will see some of the words that you have heard. So it's very important that you critically listen to this lecture so that you don't miss these points. I think that this is why conferences, because the conferences words were mentioned, that is why I think most of you chose D. Is it clear? Yes, no. All right, super. So let's go to the next one. Multiple choice, multiple answer. Read the question first. You know exactly what you're going to you know exactly what you're looking for. So prepare your mind for listening to this lecture.
over time.
For what reasons might a historic building not be restored? Okay, read the question critically. Here you go.
Good afternoon. I work in the heritage industry, and I wanted to introduce you today to some of the challenges we face while trying to preserve the important sites of our nation's past and open them up for tourism. We often have to make important and difficult decisions about whether or not to repair or restore historic buildings. Sometimes the thing that people value most about decaying artifacts is the sense of history that they evoke. Think about the ruins of a castle, for example. Because they look old and decayed, the remnants make us think about just how long the castle has been around and the many people who have used it over time. Now think about the same castle, but imagine that it has been damaged in a recent war. To restore it to how it was before the damage, or even to its original state, would seem almost like erasing important aspects of the building's past. On the other hand, if we don't intervene to halt or reverse the deterioration, there is a very real danger that the structures will become unsafe, which might mean that access to them would need to be restricted. Or it may mean that the building could collapse beyond the possibility of repair, which would mean that it might cease to exist for future generations to appreciate. Add to this philosophical debate the very real issue that renovation is a costly undertaking, and budgets cannot always stretch to cover all of the projects that need it. While it's in our interest to preserve as much of history as we can, sometimes exactly how we should do that is not a straightforward decision.
Okay. Purnendu, did you say 2 and 6? B and F? Okay, so, okay, B and F. Tarun A and F, Chandan A and F. Okay. So good job, Tarun and Chandan. So you got it perfectly correct. So A and F are the correct answers. So if you're not very confident about any of these answer choices, do not click on that answer choice. So I think a lot of you have mentioned A and F, and together with that, Subhavna, for example, building might collapse. Okay, now this is what I want to see. What is the question according to the speaker? For what reasons might a historic building not be restored? Right. So let's see the transcript. Okay. So to restore it to how it was before the damage or even to its original state would seem almost like erasing important aspects of the building's past. Which means if we try to restore it, then we might erase the important aspects of the building's past. On the other hand, if we do not intervene to halt or reverse the deterioration, there is a very real danger that the structure will become unsafe, which might mean that access to them would need to be restricted, or it may mean that the building could collapse beyond the possibility of repair. Understood the difference, Subhavana and others who chose building might collapse, right? If they are talking about, on the other hand, if you don't intervene to halt or reverse the deterioration. So the building, if you don't try to restore, it may deteriorate on its own, and then the building might even collapse beyond the possibility of repair. What is it? Decaying artifact? Because historians prefer to restore other artifacts. So Purnendu, this is something that you have chosen because historians prefer to restore other artifacts. Was it mentioned somewhere there? So this is what I'm again and again trying to tell you. May see these words. I mean, you may see the words that you have already listened to, but it does not mean that, if you have to read the entire sentence. Do you think a historic building will not be restored because historians prefer to restore other artifacts? Is what you have to ask yourself. Understood, Puneet? All right, super. So let's go to the next one. All right, so this is okay. One important thing that I have to tell you here is for all these questions, okay, that is multiple choice, single answer, multiple choice, multiple answer. You need to parallelly process information. That is, as and when you are listening to the audio, you should narrow down the answers. You should not spend more than 30 seconds. Even 30 seconds I am giving you. I think you should not spend more than 10-15 seconds after the audio ends to choose the correct answer. Why this time factor is very, very important, because in the entire listening section you get about a total of how many questions you will get? About 17 questions you will get. The first two questions, okay, again the order in which these questions appear can change, but let's assume that you get a test version in which the first two questions are summarized for context. That is, you will listen to a lecture and then you have to summarize that lecture in 50 to 70 words. These question types has an individual timer of 10 minutes each. You may even get 3 summarized for context. Okay. So once these 3 questions are over, how many questions are you left with? So I will ask you questions in between just to make sure that you are following me. 11, very good. Okay, so I'm talking about the 3 questions that you got and total of 17 questions. So you'll be left with 14 questions.
Well as
Correct? Are you guys following, or do you want me to repeat it again? All right, so 14. Yeah, let's consider this as 14 to 15 questions you have for exam. Let's say 17 to 18. Okay. So 14 to 15. So for these 14 to 15 questions, you have a single timer of about 22 to 24 minutes. And you should also understand that in this 22 to 24 minutes, this audio playback time is also included, which means you should parallelly process information for these questions as and when you completely listen to the lecture. If you don't follow that, if you spend a lot of time thinking about what is the correct answer here, then what happens is, typically in listening section, WFD, what is WFD? Right from dictation. So the questions that carries a lot of weightage, you get about 3 to 4 WFD questions, right? Typically in listening section, this you get towards the end of the listening section, that is 15, 16, 17 or 14, 15, 16, 17. Question number 14, 15, 16, 17. Now, if you do not pace your listening section properly, if you spend a lot of time here, then there is a very, very high chance that you may miss out 1 or 2 questions, WFD questions towards the end of the exam. And that can have a significant impact on your score. Not just listening, but also writing. Okay, so someone who is at very good level, who has an ability of scoring 79 plus, if they miss WFD questions, they will come to 60ish or something. If they, depending on the number of right from dictation questions they miss, they may even come down to 58 or something. So it's very, very, very important that you pace your listening section correctly. Is this clear to all of you? So time management, okay. Can you say that again? So what I was referring to here was, it's very important to pace your listening section correctly. For multiple choice, multiple answer section, you should parallelly process information as and when you are listening to the audio. You should not spend more than 30 seconds after the audio ends. Okay? If you don't do that, what happens? If you spend a lot of time thinking about the answers to these questions, what happens is there is a high chance that you may miss out the questions that appear towards the end. And typically the questions that appear towards the end are right from dictation questions, which carries a lot of weightage. So you cannot afford to miss any of the right from dictation questions, especially if you are aiming for 79%. If you finish, very good question, Purnendu. If you finish SST early, so SST is summarized spoken text. You have an individual timer of 10 minutes. Is it going to get carried forward? No. So this 10 minutes is entirely for this. If you finish it in 5 minutes, that extra 5 minutes is not going to get carried forward. So I would advise that you spend about 10 minutes, that is maybe 8 to 10 minutes, completely focusing on SST itself, because this extra time that you save here is not going to get carried forward. Is this clear, Purnendu?